Hi everyone, it's Sue Plumb here to share a scrapbooking process video with you today. Now this scrapbook layout was actually created as part of the StencilGirl Products Monochromatic Rainbow blog hop. Now I really love the concept of this blog hop that we are doing today. For this blog hop, each of our creative team members was assigned a different colour, and each of us were asked to create a monochromatic project using only that colour and tones and tints of the same colour. Now, I was lucky enough to be assigned with the colour blue, which is fortunate because I absolutely love blue. It is one of my very favourite colours to create with. So for my project, I decided to create a layout that documented a photo of my boys when they were swimming in my sister's pool over summer. And the reason I chose this photo is because the dominant colour of this photo was blue. So I thought that that would work really well on the page. So to create my layout, I started with some Dina Wakley acrylic paint and a brayer, and I simply brayed some of that paint on the lower half of the page. I didn't have any rhyme or reason, I just brayed it on just to simply cover it, leaving a bit of a white border around the edge. I just sort of wanted a rough square in the middle. So with the bottom half covered with acrylic paint, I then moved on to the top half. Now to cover the top half, I actually used a watercolour paint because I was looking for something that would provide a bit of tone and a bit of contrast to the acrylic paint that I already had on the page. So for my watercolour paint, I actually used a colour shimmer dust from Be Arty, and I mixed up some of that in a cup with water, and then I simply brushed it onto the page using a nice wide number 4 brush. If you've seen my videos before, you'll know how much I love my big wide brush. So I brushed the watercolour paint on the top half of the page, brushing down from the top, and I overlapped it a little bit in the middle just so you could see some of those brush strokes actually going over the top of the acrylic paint. Now, once I had that background down, I actually dried it off a bit just to allow the two paints to dry, and then I set about popping my stenciling over the top. Now, over the top of the watercolour paint at the top, I actually used a colour paste, which was also from Be Arty, and the name of this colour paste is Deep Water, which I thought was very appropriate for a water-themed page. Now, the fabulous stencil that I used there with those circular designs on it is actually called Circles in the Sand. And I chose this one because I thought that the loose organic shapes of the stencil would work really well with a water-themed page. So I stenciled through the stencil using the colour paste. I just used a palette knife, scraped it through, and you'll see that it has a beautiful shimmery, it's sort of a teal sort of colour about it, which I hope was not pushing the boundaries of blue too much, but I consider it a blue. So once I had that done, I dried that off with a heat gun, which you should be very thankful that I cut out because there is nothing more boring than watching paint dry. And then I set my page aside and turned my attention to creating some paper layers for the focal area of my page. Now this is where my photo was going to go, and I was aiming for it to sort of sit over that central part where the watercolour met the acrylic paint. So I gathered up some papers that I had in my stash. These were all from Cocoa Vanilla Studio. They were all just leftover scraps, and I just basically grabbed 4 different papers that had different blue tones in them, and I was looking at layering up some of those different shades. So there was, an aqua sort of color and a deeper blue, and I just wanted to layer them up to give my page the look of as many blue on blue tones as I could. Now, once I had those paper layers sorted, I set that aside and pulled my page back in front of me. By this time, the colour paste was dry, so I was able to move on to stenciling the bottom half of my page. Now, for the bottom half of my page, I used one of my very favourite StencilGirl stencils, and it's called Organised Chaos, and it was designed by Kat Kerr. Now, if you don't have this stencil in your stash, you need it. It's fantastic. I use it all the time, and you could probably tell that by how well loved that stencil looks. So To stencil on the bottom half of my page, which was actually where the acrylic paint was, I actually used the gelato. So to apply the colour, I simply scribbled the gelato onto my messy mat and then used a stencil brush to pick up the pigment, and then I used a circular motion just to brush the pigment through that stencil and onto the page to overlap the acrylic paint. Now, excuse me, you can hear my cat meowing in the background. Once I had, the reason I chose that Organized Chaos stencil for the lower half of my page is because I thought it provided a really good contrast against that really bold, dominant pattern that I had from the circles in the sand stencil at the top of the page. And it also sort of gave my page a bit of a watery, splashy feel, given that it was a photo of my boys swimming. Once that stenciling was done, I actually also added some little splatters just using a blue colour artist ink because I just further wanted to reinforce that watery sort of feel of the page. Now, once I had all of those mediums down on the page, I then turned my attention back to the papery layers and stuck those down. I also added in a blue paper doily, and I also added some fray gauze just to give my page a bit of sort of soft texture. Now, the gauze I use, I just buy in a pack from our local pharmacy, and I just cut it and fray it up with my fingers and staple it onto the page. So with all of those layers in place, it was then time to think about embellishing my page. I used a mix of die cuts and stickers from Cocoa Vanilla Studio from the Endless Summer collection. No, not Endless Summer, Hello Sunshine, sorry. I also used some torn pieces of a blue and white stripe washi tape. And the reason I used that washi tape was you can see the really strong blue colour of my son's goggles, which was not really present anywhere else on the page. And I just felt that I needed to draw that colour in as well. So you can see that I've gone and I've stuck some flowers and I've stuck some phrases and other little bits and pieces there. I used foam tape under some of them just to give extra dimension in some places. I also stuck that little heart and the little anchor, anything that I thought would work with this whole monochromatic blue theme. Now, to the left of my photo there, you can actually see that I've stuck that really cute little handmade star. That's actually from Charms Creations, and it's made out of layered felt. And on top of that, I have popped another Cocoa Vanilla Studio embellishment, and that's a flare button, which was also from the Hello Sunshine collection. So once I had all of those embellishments in place, I went back in with some blue enamel dots and just popped a few of those randomly around my page. This was also a great stash busting exercise for me, as it gave me a chance just to pull out all sorts of odds and sods from my collection and use them up on a page. Just then I was fiddling around with a little blue bow that I thought I was going to put on there, but no matter where I put it, it just didn't seem right, so I left it off in the end. Now, for my page title, I actually used that word summer, which was a free cut file from Cocoa Vanilla Studio. I've got a link in my blog post so you can download that free set for yourself. And I just added a little bit of ombre colour to the bottom of it, again using the blue gelato, scribbled it on my messy mat and just blended it on with a baby wipe just to give it a bit of an ombre tone. I was actually looking for the white part of the title to be sitting over the blue paint and then just adding that blue tone along the bottom half where it was sitting over the white page. So I was going for a white on blue and a blue on white tone there. Once I had everything in place, I stuck my photo down on the page and it was done. I hope you've enjoyed this process video today. I'll see you again soon. Bye.